Okay, welcome back to members of a 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in an ongoing study in Hegel and his Phenomenology of Spirit. And I just want to make a few preliminary comments before we get going on this lesson. Spirit in German is Geist, and it's really not spirit because Bailey translates the title The Phenomenology of Mind, and Miller translates the title Phenomenology of Spirit, so it's sometimes taken as mind, sometimes taken as spirit. But what it tries to encapsulate is a phenomenology of spirit and truth. And we just have been studying the book of Isaiah in our church summer Bible study. And the question that came up Tuesday evening was, how do we draw from the well of living water? Remember the woman at Jacob's well? And the answer was given by Christ. You draw from the living water through participation and worship in spirit and in truth. Hegel gives us a theology in spirit and in truth. And I bring that up because we're going to talk about the realm of spirit. Hegel always does. He always circles back to the same thing again, and again. What Hegel does is he assumes that you know his entire system. He'll circle around on a specific layer within that system, and he'll teach that specific emphasis, but at the same time he'll articulate his entire system again, and again, and the reader is to pick up on the subtleties of new emphasis each time. And by the time you're done with his book, you've gone through his system 100 different times in 100 different ways, but he's trying to teach the same thing that Christ taught in the Gospel of Mark. He's trying to teach noesis. He's trying to teach spiritual perception. How do we perceive in a spiritual way? So in this lesson, we're going to go again to another portion of the Phenomenology of Spirit. I do use the Miller translation. We're going to look at the pages 211 to 226 on the actualization of genuine self-consciousness. And as always, Hegel uses the triad of logic, essence, and spirit. So you'll notice block 1 is logic, block 2 is essence, and block 3 is spirit. And we will use that same triad to look at the actualization of self-consciousness. So we begin with a logic, like we do in all of Hegel's lessons, where he gives us an outline of the entire lesson. Let's go to block 1, the logic of actualization. Logic, self-consciousness is aware of being the real world as an abstract idea, or a idea in itself, or a collection of ideas in themselves. Immediate sense certainty is not the real. Immediate generality is also suspended. Immediate determinate objectivity is superficial and not the real. 2. The essence of the inner being of self-consciousness itself. The object of the real becomes a self-consciousness for the self. The self is implicated in that inner being we discover in life, that inner being we discover in our reality. That inner being implicates us. We are implicated in that inner being. We belong to that unveiled inner being. In principle, the self knows itself as recognized in the object of the real. 3. This is the title that I learned in this lesson. This is the one that hit me. Take a look at block 1, number 3. Put a big circle around it. I did. That's one that hit me. Spirit becomes the duplication of self-consciousness in its being posited as an internal externality. We've talked about that before, but remember, we form our worldview in the inner self. We form a sign model of our worldview. It is subjective, but then we posit it, we put it forth at the very edge of objectivity. At the very edge of objectivity as a filter through which we view the world. So it is essentially an internal externality, and that duplicates self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is inner sign model, and self-consciousness is outer filter. So this is a definition that I learned, a finer point from Hegel. Spirit becomes the duplication of self-consciousness in its being posited as an internal externality. Therefore, immediate, determinate certainty is superseded. Implicit inner being is that within which the self is implicated, leading to the duplication of self-consciousness in the realm of spirit as the realm of positing. Certainty is raised up to being the true, which must next become explicit and actualized for self-consciousness. There's your outline of the whole lesson in block 1. And like I said, for me, what really hit me in this lesson was block 1, note 3, the title. Spirit becomes the duplication of self-consciousness in it being posited as a filter, in it being posited as an internal externality. That to me really hit me. But block 2 is really interesting too, because we have our outline, we've got our logic. Now we go to block 2 and we take a look at the essence of the movement of inner being. Very powerful. Let's go to block 2. The essence of the movement of inner being. The double movement of self-consciousness. It goes out in independence for another. We posit that sign model, that worldview for another. And then there's a return of true freedom back into the self as that which is for the self. This is the raising up of self-consciousness in another. So 2, the raising up of self-consciousness in another. This is the attainment of pure reason. It is the consciousness in and for itself. It becomes the process of becoming, the process of the unifying self-consciousness, a worldview that unifies all particularity, that unifies all individuality. 3, we have that return movement, the return of self-consciousness for the self. This completes the movement of the substance of spiritual essence. It is the ground of substantial becoming. It is the realization of pure self-consciousness. So the double movement of self-consciousness is to go out of the self and share our sign model worldview with another self. And then, through their recognition, there's a return moment back into ourselves, back into our inner life, where we imprint our mindset a little deeper, where we imprint the mindset with Christ a little bit deeper, a little bit more meaningful. So the double movement is the going out of self-consciousness and the return of self-consciousness. Going out of self-consciousness in presenting our sign model worldview to another person. And then, after their recognition, we have the return moment to the inner self, where we imprint our mindset even deeper with Christ. I really like that block too. You could circle that entire block. That's a very good description of dialectic. This is what Hegel calls dialectic. That entire block 2 is Hegel's dialectic. Going out and then return, going out and then return. That is dialectic. That is the definition of dialectic. Self-consciousness goes out in positing our worldview for another, and then after their recognition of our worldview, their input concerning our worldview, there's a return back into the self. The second part of dialectic, return moment, where we develop further that substance of spiritual essence. We develop a further, deeper imprinting of the phronesis, mind set. We more deeply imprint. And remember, all of this, you have to go back to the summary chart, and that summary chart needs to be in your mind all the time with Hegel. So we know that in reality, dialectic for Hegel is the double movement of self-consciousness. There's your definition. Block 2, note 1, circle the heading, and add this. Dialectic is the double movement of self-consciousness, going out in independence for another, and the return of true freedom back into the self. Dialectic, Hegelian, dialectic is the double movement of self-consciousness. You can circle block 2, note 1, or you can circle the entire block 2, and that is your definition of Hegelian dialectic. And it is the essence of his theology, the essence of his philosophy. We've looked at block 1. We have looked at the logic of actualizing the self-consciousness, and we have gained a definition in block 1, note 3, that spirit is the duplication of self-consciousness in its being posited as an internal externality. We posit our worldview sign model as a filter at the edge of objectivity, but it's something we have constructed in subjectivity. So it's two sides of a hinge. Hegel calls it a hinge moment. Subjectivity on one side of the hinge, objectivity on the other side of the hinge. It's a positing of our worldview as a filter at the very edge of objectivity, but we have constructed it in subjectivity. It's an inner possession, it's an inner construction, but we share it by positing and putting it forth as a filter, and as a filter it is on the forefront of our mind, it's at the edge of objectivity. We have our logic, we have the essence of the movement of inner being, the definition of the Hegelian dialectic in block 2. Now we are ready to look at that definition, spirit as the duplication of self-consciousness, in block 3. Okay, block 3, very important here. This is what I learned in this lesson. I really appreciated this finer, subtle pinpoint of truth. Spirit as the duplication of self-consciousness, 7 aspects. Remember, it's the duplication of self-consciousness as positing an internal externality. Number 1, substance. It is the substance of the inner ethical essence. Recognition. It is the self-consciousness as recognized in another person, as recognized through an objective event. Self-certainty. It is self-consciousness reaching actualization of its own self-certainty. Truth becomes actualized in another person or in an objective event. Spirit becomes a genuine outer objective existence that we can recognize. We recognize a realm of spirit, we recognize a realm of positing. Universality of self-consciousness is actualized in the return moment, in that moment of recognition by another self of our worldview, or a modification of our posited worldview. Unification is realized as objective, true being that lies behind surface reality. There is a spiritual power of the kingdom of God. There is a spiritual power of the unifying power of the kingdom of God behind surface reality that is the true objective being of genuine reality. So there's your 7 aspects: substance, recognition, self-certainty, truth, spirit, universality, and unification. I learned a lot in this lesson, and like I say, I've learned a lot this year anyway in studying Hegel. It's taken me 3 years to learn Hegel, but this year is very rewarding. But all of it has to be integrated with the summary chart that we did. Remember that. You go